Steel wheels scream against frozen rails at Ford's River Rouge rail yard. It is winter in the early 1900s. The air tastes of coal smoke and iron. Steam hangs low, heavy and gray, clinging to switch lamps and signal posts. A freight cut rolls forward without slowing. Couplers clatter, buffers shudder. The ground vibrates through leather soles. A brakeman steps off the ballast and moves between cars. This is not hesitation, it is routine. He reaches for the coupling link as the cars drift together. The steel closes faster than his body expects. There is no guard plate, no automatic brake, no physical barrier between human flesh and moving mass. In less than a second, dozens of tons of rolling steel converge. The force is absolute. Bone gives way. The sound is brief and final. The train does not stop immediately. Momentum carries it forward. When the brakes finally bite, the man is already dead. The yard does not fall silent. Engines idle and hiss. Switchmen shout distances and numbers. Another cut waits on the next track. Production does not pause for the body cooling on the ties. One worker disappears from the line, and the system absorbs it without resistance. In a ledger, the death becomes an entry. In the yard, it becomes an empty space where a man stood seconds earlier. There is no explanation yet, only motion. Iron rolling onward, men keeping pace or falling under. One death becomes many scattered across shifts and seasons. The yard retains no memory. Families do. This is the story of how being a brakeman becomes a guaranteed death sentence, and why the rail yards that make this possible are built to keep moving no matter the cost.
America at the turn of the century runs hot and loud. Steel mills roar day and night. Rail lines stitch together cities, mines, ports, and factories. Smoke drifts above expanding towns. The ground trembles as freight passes. Speed becomes a national virtue, and delay a kind of failure. Railroads do more than move goods. They make modern industry possible. Ford Motor Company rises inside this momentum. Efficiency is the promise. Volume is the proof. At River Rouge in Michigan, the company builds an industrial city dedicated to flow. Iron ore arrives by rail, coal follows, steel moves inward, finished automobiles roll out the same way. Trains enter and exit constantly, their schedules measured in minutes, not hours. Nothing moves here without steel wheels on steel rails. Private rail lines snake through Ford's property. These are not public routes. They exist for one purpose: production. They answer to no timetable except output. Every delay costs money. Every stopped train interrupts furnaces, presses, and assembly lines that are never meant to rest. Nationally, freight traffic explodes during these years. Tonnage multiplies within a generation. The public celebrates it. Newspapers describe railroads as arteries of progress. Danger fades into the background. At the center of this system stand brakemen. They are essential and largely unseen. Their work solves a basic mechanical problem: how to control long, heavy trains without automatic braking systems. The answer is the human body. Muscle turns brake wheels. Balance keeps men upright on moving cars. Timing replaces engineering. Industry statistics quietly record the cost. Brakemen die at rates higher than nearly any other occupation. Each death appears alone in print. Totals remain unspoken. Ford's public image rests on innovation, but inside the rail yards, technology lags behind demand. Manual braking stays standard. Coupling remains hands-on. Trains move faster. Loads grow heavier. Safety does not advance at the same pace. The culture praises endurance. Injuries are treated as proof of toughness. Death becomes familiar. If this history matters to you, if these men deserve memory instead of footnotes, consider subscribing. These stories endure because they are uncomfortable and necessary. Beneath the promise of efficiency lies a system designed to fail the people inside it. From a distance, the industrial rail yard looks controlled. Parallel tracks run straight and clean. Switching towers stand still against the sky. Boxcars wait in lines that appear patient and orderly. Steam drifts upward in slow plumes. Nothing about the scene suggests urgency. Up close, the illusion collapses. The yard is a machine that never rests. Steel wheels roll inches from men's boots. Couplers slam together with a crack that echoes in the chest. Brakemen climb ladders bolted to moving cars, their gloves stiff with cold, their hands numb from iron and wind. Roofs are slick with frost. A single misstep sends a body sliding toward open space and moving steel. They control speed by hand. There are no air brakes here. That technology exists, known and proven, but it is expensive and unevenly adopted. On Ford's internal rail lines, manual systems persist. Each car must be braked individually. A brakeman spins a wheel that tightens a chain, forcing iron brake shoes against steel wheels. The friction screams, sparks flash in low light. The smell of hot metal mixes with coal smoke. Coupling is worse. To connect cars, a man steps between them as they roll together. The closing speed looks slow until it isn't. Timing becomes the only protection. Inches matter. A misjudgment lasts less than a second. It ends everything. The scale allows no forgiveness. Loaded freight cars weigh tens of tons. A train stretches hundreds of feet. Once in motion, momentum rules every outcome. The work demands continuous operation. Stopping a cut to improve footing or visibility costs time. Time costs output. Output is treated as sacred. To an observer, the men appear confident. Movements are practiced. Signals are brief. This confidence is learned under threat. Every successful coupling convinces the system it is safe enough. Near misses leave no record. Fatigue, ice, and worn equipment accumulate quietly. The yard reveals its danger only when steel meets flesh. What kills these men is often invisible until it is too late. Fatigue arrives before danger announces itself. It settles into the body during 10 and 12-hour shifts, blunting reflexes and slowing judgment. Night work erases depth perception. Headlamps flatten distance. Moving steel becomes harder to read. Winter tightens its grip on the yard. Ice skins ladders and brake platforms. Gloves stiffen until fingers lose feeling. A brakeman cannot see the true speed of closing cars. He feels vibration through his boots and guesses. He hopes. The environment offers no mercy. Wind carries coal dust and metal grit into eyes and lungs. Steam clouds vision, then vanishes, then returns. Noise never stops. Couplers clang, wheels shriek, engines roar. There is no moment of silence long enough to reset the senses. Fatigue turns routine into risk, one movement at a time. The equipment rarely warns before it fails. Couplers wear from the inside, cracks hidden beneath grease and grime. Ladders loosen from repeated vibration, bolts back out. Inspections exist, but they are brief and predictable. The pressure to keep trains moving overrides everything else. A delayed cut means angry supervisors and disrupted schedules. Workers see problems forming, they feel them through the steel. Reporting them invites punishment or dismissal. Management understands the danger, but at a distance. Engineers discuss safer systems in journals and meetings. Automatic air brakes are known, their advantages are clear. So are their costs. Retrofitting yards slow production. New equipment interrupts flow. The knowledge exists, adoption stalls. The risk is calculated and accepted on behalf of the men in the yard. This is how preventable disaster hides, not in ignorance, but in deferred decisions. The danger is visible to those whose hands touch the machinery and invisible to those who only read reports. If you have worked a job where the risk is obvious on the floor and abstract in the office, you recognize this divide. These failures accumulate quietly. Worn metal, tired bodies, ignored warnings.
The deaths that follow do not stand alone. They connect to one another, forming a pattern that spreads across yards, companies, and years. The deaths repeat across the map: Midwest yards, northeastern terminals, industrial spurs feeding factories and ports. Brakemen die the same way in all of them, crushed between rolling cars, thrown from ladders as steel jolts beneath them, pulled under wheels that never slow in time. The sounds differ only slightly. The result is always final. Each death is recorded alone: a date, a location, a brief description. Different yards, different supervisors. The mechanics never change. Manual coupling, hand braking, human bodies placed where machines close gaps without warning. The paperwork keeps them separate. The pattern remains unspoken. Railroad safety advocates notice. They compile figures. They publish warnings in trade journals and engineering reports. Manual braking, they write, is obsolete. It forces men to become moving parts inside heavy machinery. They describe the physics plainly. Momentum cannot be managed by muscle alone. Steel does not respond to fatigue or fear. Their conclusions circulate for years. The danger is documented. The language is measured. The urgency is real. Ford's operations reflect the national condition. Private industrial yards adopt the same systems and inherit the same losses. The rail lines feeding River Rouge do not differ in principle from those elsewhere. Trains move faster, loads grow heavier, practices remain unchanged. When a man dies, management isolates the moment: a misstep, a failed component, a single point of blame. The larger system remains intact. There is no full shutdown, no comprehensive redesign. Production resumes. This fragmentation protects the machine. Responsibility disperses across departments, contractors, and schedules. Each death appears not large enough to justify disruption. Each one is survivable for the company. Together, they amount to a steady removal of human lives from the workforce. The trains do not stop at the edge of the yard. They run straight into people's lives. Houses rise beside the Rouge complex because work is there and nowhere else pays as steadily. Tracks cut past back fences. Steel wheels pass within sight of kitchen windows. The ground trembles during meals. Coal smoke settles into curtains and lungs. The smell of hot metal drifts through open doors in summer and seeps through walls in winter. Shifts dictate everything. Men leave before dawn, boots crunching over frozen ground, breath visible in the dark. They return after sunset, clothes soaked with sweat and smoke, hands blackened by grease and iron dust. 10 or 12 hours on the yard hollow the body out. There is little.
The force does not stop where the body falls. It radiates outward through steel, timber, and men. Wheels lock late, cars jackknife slightly, couplers bend, rails shudder and shift under sudden load. The smell of hot metal hangs in the air, sharp and bitter. Coal dust rises from the ballast and settles on faces and clothing. For a moment, the yard is quieter, not silent, but strained. Operations slow, not stop. A section of track is fouled. Equipment shows damage where steel met resistance it was never meant to feel. Supervisors arrive with clipboards and watches. They mark time. They note positions. The scene is documented quickly, efficiently. The body is removed from the rails. Sometimes it is not whole. Pieces are gathered from between ties and beneath trucks. The work is methodical because it must be. Another train waits. The danger does not recede during recovery. It intensifies. Men move across slick ballast, distracted and shaken. Cranes and jacks shift damaged cars back into alignment. Chains tighten under load. Another worker slips while lifting. Another comes within inches of being crushed. The air vibrates with shouted warnings and metal strain. The same system that killed one man now threatens the rest. This is why containment fails. The hazard is not localized. It exists everywhere the rails run. Every moving car carries it forward. Every repair requires men to re-enter the same spaces that proved deadly moments earlier. There was no perimeter that makes the work safe again, only urgency to clear the line and resume flow. The yard absorbs the damage the way it absorbs death. Bent hardware is replaced, rails are tamped back into place, the schedule adjusts slightly. Production pressure closes in. The physical scars fade faster than the memory. By the end of the shift, motion resumes. Another cut rolls through the same space. The rails hold. The system appears intact. What remains is loss that cannot be logged. Soon the story reduces further. Names fade. Faces disappear. What remains are figures in columns, waiting to be totaled. The counting begins after the yard moves again. Official tallies reduce the loss to numbers that never capture the scale. Death certificates list an occupation, a date, a brief cause. Brakeman, crushed, killed by rail equipment. Families count something else entirely. Empty chairs, unworn coats, tools that never return to use. Absence becomes the measure that matters. Many of the dead are buried quietly. Funerals are brief and local. Some bodies are never fully recovered from beneath cars or between ties. What remains is gathered and identified as best it can be. The paperwork closes quickly. The yard requires clearance. Production schedules demand resolution. The system moves forward without ceremony. Communities absorb the loss together and feel it alone. Entire neighborhoods know the sound of the whistles that mark a fatal delay. Shops close early, conversations lower in volume. Grief spreads from house to house because the danger touched all of them. At the same time, each family faces a private reckoning. Wages vanish overnight. Dependents remain. There is little formal support. Relief funds are inconsistent. Legal recourse is slow or non-existent. The economics are as unforgiving as the machinery. A single death removes income from a household already living close to the margin. Children leave school to work sooner. Widows take in laundry or boarders. The cost of the system extends far beyond the rail yard, settling into daily life where it is hardest to escape. The work does not pause for mourning. Trains continue to run past the same homes. New men fill old positions. The rhythm resumes because it must. Over time, individual names blur together. What remains is an accumulation of loss, spread across years and regions, rarely acknowledged in full. This is the human toll hidden behind freight totals and production figures. It is measured not only in lives taken, but in lives altered permanently by a system that treats death as manageable. Investigations arrive next, promising explanation and closure. They rarely deliver either. The inquiries arrive after the rails are cleared and motion resumes. Paper replaces blood. Clipboards move where stretchers were. Officials focus on what is easiest to isolate: a slipped foot, a mistimed step, a coupler that failed at the wrong moment. The language narrows the frame until the system itself disappears. Investigators walk the yard while engines idle nearby. Steam hisses, metal ticks as it cools. They measure distances and photograph hardware. The noise never fully stops. Findings settle on immediate causes because those are visible and containable. A component can be replaced, a man cannot. The broader design, manual coupling, hand braking, continuous movement, remains outside the report. Technically, the conclusions are correct and incomplete. Yes, a coupler fails. Yes, a chain stretches. But these components fail inside a system that demands human bodies occupy lethal spaces to function. Manual braking requires men on moving equipment. Coupling requires entry between rolling cars. Removing either risk requires redesign. Redesign costs time and money. The reports avoid that calculation. Operations resume with minimal changes. A new part is installed. A reminder is issued. The schedule tightens to recover lost time. The same practices remain in place. The same risks are accepted as unavoidable. The roar returns to full volume. Heat radiates from wheels. Dust settles back onto shoulders and faces. For workers, the message is clear. Nothing fundamental has changed. The danger they felt yesterday is still present today. They step back onto ladders and between cars, knowing that official attention has already moved on. Their bodies remain the last line of control in a system that refuses to slow. This is how failure becomes routine. By treating each death as an isolated event, accountability dissolves. No single decision appears decisive enough to challenge. The machine continues intact, shielded by process and paperwork. The yard looks orderly again. Trains glide, signals hold. From a distance, nothing seems wrong. Up close, everything that killed before is still in place. This failure is not accidental. The logic is simple and unforgiving. Stopping trains costs money. Redesigning yards costs more. Every minute of halted movement ripples outward through furnaces, presses, and assembly lines. Heat bleeds from steel while schedules fall behind. Management hears those costs immediately. The cost of death arrives later, dispersed and easier to absorb. Workers stand at the narrow end of this calculation. They have little power to refuse unsafe work. Walking away means losing wages in an economy that offers few alternatives. Speaking up risks replacement. The roar of engines and the pressure of the clock close in from both sides. Consent becomes theoretical when survival depends on the job. Technically, the problem is not mysterious. Manual braking and coupling place men inside zones of lethal force. Automatic air brakes reduce the need for bodies on moving equipment. Guarded couplers remove the requirement to step between cars. These solutions exist. They are discussed. They are delayed. Regulation trails technology by years, sometimes decades. Laws respond after bodies accumulate, not before. The system adapts to loss without changing its core. Death becomes a variable rather than a warning. It is accounted for in hiring, training, and turnover. New men replace the dead. Production continues. The vibration of passing trains masks the absence left behind. From a distance, the yard appears efficient. Up close, it runs on expendable lives. This acceptance shapes culture. Risk is framed as toughness. Survival is treated as skill. Those who fall are remembered briefly and then folded into statistics. The machine rewards those who endure and erases those who do not. Over time, this logic hardens. It becomes normal. If you hear echoes of this reasoning elsewhere, if you recognize the same trade-offs made again and again, say so in the comments. History records change only when people insist on naming the cost. The rails continue to hum. Steel continues to move. The question is not whether the danger is known, but whether knowing has ever been enough to force action. Some lessons arrive after years of loss. Others are ignored until nothing remains to learn. Change arrives without ceremony. New brake hoses appear along the rails, their rubber skins hissing as air charges the line. Valves click, wheels answer together instead